and then the kick happened, and I was like, whoa. I was screaming at the top of my lungs for pain. I could not bear it. My jaw was on my chest, and I looked at him and I was like, Daddy, I don't want to die. And I can't imagine a dad hearing that from his daughter at 16, 17 years old. You have 2 lives, and you live the second one when you realize you only have one.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Getting Back Up with me, Anthony Ogogo. And if you're watching this, you can see I'm in another hotel room around the world after a week of wrestling, of public speaking, of fitness stuff. I've had a couple of podcasts as well. It's been another crazy week, but it's been great. It's been an amazing week, and this week I'm really proud to present another brand new podcast on the Getting Back Up podcast this week with the wonderful, the charismatic, the inspiring Sara Misir. Now, Sara really is someone that I've listened to this podcast a couple of times now. I've been blown away. Each time I listen to her, I hear something new from her wisdom. Someone so young is so wise. So Sara, her story is, you're going to hear all about it. A Jamaican equestrian rider, one of the best young equestrian riders on the planet, until she got bucked off her horse and kicked in the face, almost died. She got back from university to get back on the horse. After another injury, she decided to switch sports and went into race driving. Now, honestly, this girl's story is phenomenal. She breaks down barriers, a young black woman from Jamaica, smashing through barriers. You're gonna love this podcast. It's amazing. So without further ado, let's get stuck in. Welcome to the Getting Back Up podcast. How are you?
I am good. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
The Getting Back Up podcast, as you know, it's all about talk to people with amazing stories that have achieved great things in their lives, only after suffering massive setback. And although being a young woman, you've suffered massive amounts of setback in your life. What I love about your story, you've used probably the worst thing to happen to you and turned it to become the best thing to happen to you. And I'm honest, I'm blown away by your story. I'm really, really inspired by what you've done. And I can't wait to hear you go into detail about that. But before we do, for those that don't know who you are and what you've done, who are you and why are we talking today?
So, my name is Sara Misir. I'm Jamaican. I grew up in equestrian, and unfortunately, I took a different turn around the age of 17, and I started go-karting. I am now the history maker in Jamaica for being the first Jamaican and Caribbean Formula Woman racer. So this was a competition in the UK for amateurs, drivers to kind of give a go at professional racing. So last year was my first professional year, and this is going into my second. So that's pretty much the little synopsis of Sara.
And I've watched interviews you've done in the past. I've read your interviews and stuff, and you play things down. We don't play things down here. We build things up, and you've done some unbelievable stuff. So, and we're going to talk all about it, but I like to take our listeners and our watchers on the full journey. So going all the way back to the beginning, well, I say all the way back, like 25 years ago, back in Jamaica. Tell me about your life growing up.
Growing up, it was interesting because I was traveling so often. My dad was away. I used to travel with my mom. My mom's Italian, so I used to be between Jamaica, Miami, and Italy for the first 7 years of my life. So I'm bilingual.
How was that, having parents from different cultures, different backgrounds, different languages? How was that growing up?
I never really noticed it growing up. Living abroad and living on my own, I'm starting to widen my perspective and see the differences between my dad, who's Jamaican, and my mom, who's Italian. So I started to understand what was going on in my childhood and like why my mom acted the way she did, or my father acted the way he did, or not in a bad sense, but just seeing the differences. And now starting to understand. I was like, okay, I wasn't the crazy one. I just didn't understand what was going on. It was challenging. It was challenging because my mom and my dad didn't get along very well when I was younger, and it was an escape for me to go into horseback riding.
What's your drive? What drives you?
I just always want to be the best. I just always want to, whatever I'm doing, I want to be have the best project in school. I want to be the best on the soccer field. I want to be anything I am. I just always want to be the top three, no matter what I do. It's always I try to remember that I can't be the best out of everyone there, but I can be my best no matter what. So I try my best not to compare myself to others, and I just compare myself to what I was yesterday. And if I'm doing my best and if I know that I can give more, then I'm happy with that. Like that is what I push myself for.
There's loads of things online about you, right, and your story, but they're snippets. I want to delve into the dark depths of it because that's where people learn, I think, and that's where people heal. So going back to your question, were you, obviously, when you were 8 or 9 beating 10, 12, 11-year-olds, being 10, 11, beating 16-year-old, obviously you're really good. What made you good at it, and why were you so good?
I think my advantage was, have you ever heard the metaphor of being the caddy's son? Where you're going against all these people who have had all the funding and the best horses. So I never grew up very wealthy. My parents were struggling to send me to horseback riding. So I had a deal with well, my parents had a deal with my coach where if I would help out on the stables, even at 8 years old, I they would it was an exchange where I would help around the stables, they would give me horses to ride and compete in, and they would help me out to keep me in the sport because my coach was like my second mom at the time. She raised me in the sport, so she wanted to see me in it as well, which I was very grateful for. So I was always hopping from horse to horse and I was always adapting. So I understood a horse's language and I understood how to communicate with horses. So it was more of understanding your environment and understanding how to communicate with an animal that's twice my size, doesn't speak my language, has a mind of its own. You know, when it doesn't want to do something, you people have a weird understanding that horseback riding you control a horse when that is not it. You both agree to do something that day. And if they don't want to do it, I promise you there's nothing in a human that can force a horse to do something. So I think it was just my passion with animals and that I was at home. I didn't really have a very stable home at the time where it was comfortable to stay home because there was a lot of fighting, a lot of issues going on at the house. So horseback riding was like my escape. So it was something where I just dove everything I had into it and it just grew into something that felt right. Like it being on a horse just has always felt like it was meant to be, like it's natural, it's normal.
No, I get it. I get it. I'd never thrown a punch before in anger, before walking into the boxing gym. Never really been hit before, other than one of my sisters probably giving me a slap down there when I was being cheeky. But when I went into the boxing ring and I sparred for the first time, I was at home. I guess in the same way when you sat on that horse, you just feel at home. And there's no other way to describe it. What was the biggest achievement? What was your biggest achievement in equestrian?
My biggest achievement, I think, was when I got my first place internationally was in Guatemala. And I loved that one specifically so much because that competition, I got a bad horse to start with where they gave me a horse that was injured, so I couldn't really compete. So that I continuously had to be changing horses to find one that I could compete with, which is very abnormal in international riding. So there were so many setbacks that day, that weekend, and it was just one problem after the other. And then the competition day came, and I still won, no matter what was thrown at me. So that was one of my biggest accomplishments, and I think that it's still strongest memory I have from riding.
So normally when I have people on, athletes on the podcast, most of the time those athletes they're retired or they're at the end of their glittering career and they've I've interviewed boxers that become world champion at the third or fourth time of asking. I've interviewed footballers that eventually played for England after years and years and years of kind of like plodding along. You're very different because you're still very young and you're still very much in the spring of your career, although your second career. Although what fascinates me about you is how you had this massive amount of adversity and in such a young age, 16 years old. So let's talk about that because this is mind blowing how you were able to pick yourself off the floor and go again. So what happened that day when your life changed?
Well, it's more to that because it was everything leading up to that day as well, where it was actually my birthday that weekend. So imagine the week. It's my birthday is January 29th. So it's the last week of January. I'm going into my high school exams. So I'm doing my mock exams those 2 weeks as well. So I'm in the middle of exams. It's a Saturday. It's the day after my birthday. And I told my dad, I was like, let me just go horseback riding. I just need to blow off some steam, relax. I've been studying like crazy. I just want to go and have a good time. And I was happy that day. And my dad very rarely comes horseback riding with me. So he was never a fan because horseback riding is very dangerous. And he's more on the motorsports side. So he was like, all right, I'll take you today, which was rare. So I was happy that he came. And then I saw there was a competition out there. And of course, I can't help myself. So I entered the competition with my horse, knowing that I hadn't been training. My horse hadn't been ready because horses, when you're not consistently training, they get hyperactive and they can become a little bit rebellious. In the horse world, we like to call it fresh, where imagine if you in boxing where you hadn't been training a while, you have all this energy built up and you just go in the ring and just go off and you're kind of off your game and things can happen. So it's the same with horses. So I went and I borrowed a shirt. And you know, when you have those days where you're forcing something to happen and you're forcing, when there's so many obstacles that you're just like, no, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. So there were so many things. I didn't have my saddle pads, my horse was ready, I didn't have the proper clothes to compete. But I went out and I got all of that done just to compete for one day in a local thing that meant nothing. And I go out and I'm warming up for the competition and I'm jumping and I go over a jump with my horse and he knocks a pole. So his history, he was a horse that I was training. He was one of my first horses that I've ever had. And he was a young horse. He came from the racetrack, so he got kicked off the racetrack. And in Jamaica, they have this common thing where they would knock wood on the gates to get them to launch out to the gates faster. So he had a problem every time he would knock the poles, which were wood, it would remind him, and he would kind of tick off a little bit. So being that he had all this energy pent up, and he was going over the jump, he knocked the pole. He hated making mistakes, and then he gave a buck, which wasn't a big buck, but I was half off the horse. And I was just like, you know what? I'll just jump off and get back on. And I swung off. It spooked him. I had the reins in my hand. He spun around, which is a natural thing for horse to do. He spun around and kicked up. And I was just right there by his hind leg. And he spun around so fast, I had no time to react. I saw the hoof coming and I couldn't duck. And it's happened before, and I have ducked him and I have moved out of the way. But this time I was just right there. And one thing that I haven't told many people is that when I was falling off, it was so embarrassing because it was such a little fall that I was like, I wish this was a little bit bigger so it didn't look so embarrassing. And then the kick happened, and I was like, whoa, like, be careful what you wish for. And I got kicked right here, kind of like an uppercut from the hind leg of a horse. So the closer you stand to the horse, the less you'll feel the kick. So I was at the point where they extend their rear legs. So he kicked up with both legs and I got kicked by one. So it was a full blow. But I was grateful because if it was any higher, I would have lost my eye. If it was any lower, it could have been my neck. So it was by the grace of God that it happened how it happened. And it was another grace that my dad was there, not my mom, because my mom can't handle those kinds of injuries. She can't. And that day, when I knocked out, like I knew I got kicked and I knocked out and then I woke up and I looked around, like I woke up screaming from pain and I thought that was it for me. I have a high pain tolerance. I've broken a lot of bones before. I've rode dirt bikes. I've played football. I was a goalkeeper, so I could take hits. You know, I would slam into people. I would slam on the ground. I'd do whatever I have to do. So I had a high pain tolerance. I was screaming at the top of my lungs for pain. I could not bear it. My jaw was on my chest. My jaw was dislocated. Hair was shattered. My skull broke in half. My eye orbit, two places. My eye was in the socket. It was a disaster. And then I looked around and everything was frozen. When I mean it was frozen, I mean the horses were frozen. I've never seen that before. And like all the riders around me, all the coaches, my coach was behind me holding me, and I looked down and it was just red, a pool of red. And it was I was in and out of consciousness. I remember being held and seeing the blood and feeling my jaw like it was dislocated. I remember feeling them putting me on the stretcher. They couldn't put the neck brace on because the jaw was out of place. And then I remember being in the ambulance. And the scariest part was actually being in the ambulance because I was with my dad and I was holding his hand. And I looked at him and I was like, Daddy, I don't want to die. And I can't imagine a dad hearing that from his daughter at 16, 17 years old. So I remember going in the ambulance and the tires were screeching and they were yelling. The ambulance driver was yelling, she's losing too much blood. We can't make it to the hospital in town because horseback riding was about 45 minutes out of town. So they had to take me to a rural hospital. So that was another experience in itself, and I remember screaming in the chair, and I felt so bad because I saw so many people in pain around me. I was like, I'm making so much noise, but I can't stop, and I'm just bothering everyone around me. And then they sedated me, and then everything calmed down from there. So I started to feel like a human being again. And I looked at my dad, and then my mom came, and then she was with me in the hospital, and then they took me to a different hospital, a private hospital for the care. And then that day was filled with doctors, X-rays, MRIs, people coming to tell me what's gonna happen, and then I had the surgery the next day. And then I remember the same day that I had all the sand, so I needed a tetanus shot, I had sand all over me, there was sand in my mouth. Like all of this was from the kick itself. So it was straight through. So you could see straight through my mouth. And I had a plastic surgeon. He came and sewed me up and was draining the blood from my face. And he was helping me kind of be put more together just so the skin wouldn't overstretch. And then the next day, I had about a 9 or 10 hour surgery where they put in, I have two plates here, one plate here and one plate here, and about 20 or more screws that are with those plates. And then they had put in my gums, two metal bars and then wired my jaw shut. So I had my jaw shut for about 2 months, roughly. So I was on a liquid diet. I spent about a week in the hospital. And what's funny thing is that when I was at the doctor and they were about to do the surgery, they're showing me the X-ray and saying how they were gonna fix everything. I looked at them and I saw my wisdom teeth, and I looked at the doctor because he's a facial order surgeon. I was like, so what are those? Because my orthodontist had told me that I didn't have any wisdom teeth. And then he was like, oh, those are your wisdom teeth. In about a couple months, you're gonna have to come and take them out. So I just had them take it out at the same time. So I was very thankful. I think that was the best part of the injury that I didn't have to go through that whole swollen cheeks thing again, the not eating. So that was my best decision I ever made. And so I had about 2 months of my jaw being shut. And one issue that came with that is that all my tissues froze. Even when they unwired my jaw, I still couldn't open my mouth. So it was about another month for me to be eating proper solid food. So I lost about 25 pounds in 1 week and then stayed skin and bone for about 2 months. I mean, I went from being an athlete who was playing football, volleyball, swimming, horseback riding, tennis, anything I could do, dancing, cheerleading, anything I could do in high school, to barely being able to walk up the stairs without having to take a break.
This is all about you. I'm explaining something. was a boxer my entire life. And in boxing, you're trained to hide your emotions because if I'm boxing somebody and you give me a body punch, I can't go, ow, my body is sore, you're going to come after it. So you got to hide your emotions and stuff. So my entire life, I never cried. My best friend died a couple of years ago and I shed one tear. I'm not that emotional. This last year, I've been doing some therapy and I've been trying to work on myself. I'm a massive baby. I cry all the time. I cry all the time. And you were talking it when you said to me a minute ago that you said you held your dad's hand or he held your hand. You said, Dad, I don't want to die. I had to fight the tears back. Not today. Not today, son. Not today. That was all so powerful, and must have been so frightening for you, so frightening for your mum and your dad and your family.
It was more frightening for my mom and my dad because as much as I'm telling you this story and I'm telling, and everyone listening is probably like, wow, that was so difficult. It's to me, I could do it all again. I could, but my parents couldn't do that again. I promise you they couldn't. And it's funny, I learned how to express myself and speak up for myself when my jaw was wired. So when I had to start writing everything on pads and mumbling to people to get them to understand what I'm saying because I couldn't talk. So I was always talking like this, which is that's pretty much minimal how I was talking. So it when I was able to talk, I never wanted to stop. I wanted to tell everyone exactly what I wanted, exactly how I felt, exactly how things were supposed to be. And it woke me up. It was a reality check that I desperately needed at that time. Because I was going down a path that, I had anger issues. I was getting into fights at school. I was always wanting to be like I was always angry, and I didn't know I was always angry until I couldn't talk anymore. And I realized that I started to have to think to myself and I had time to sit down and actually think. And I didn't really have a choice. So it was a lot of learning in a short period of time. And I would never take that back. When people ask me if I could go back and not go riding that day, I would not change not one thing. I mean, maybe a couple of things to maybe ease my parents' pain, like not looking at my dad and saying I don't want to die in screaming agony of pain, just for him. But I do think that they learned things, and my dad did change that day because before that day, me and him weren't as close as we are now. And for him, it was a wake up call where he became more present and he became more interactive. And not to say he never wanted to, but he never prioritized it because he was so indulged in, providing and working. So he was a different person after that day. And so was my mom. And I think the lessons learned from that day, both for me and for my family, were invaluable. Like they were priceless.
You and I have a lot of similarity, an awful lot of similarities, and way more than I realised because I didn't know all this stuff about you. One thing I struggled with letting things go. Still to this day, I struggle. And one of the reasons why I like doing this podcast because I hear other people that went through their own shit, and the ones that are more successful or the ones that get to the other side quicker, they're the ones that accept and they move on. I struggled. I struggled to accept, and I still struggle a little bit between you and I. Another thing you said earlier, and this is why I love your mentality. I love the way your perspective. You said how lucky and how grateful you are that the kick happened there. Any higher, you'd lost your eye. Any lower, you could lost your life. Like that in itself. And like you said, like your dad also, like there's nothing. I'm not a parent yet, but there's nothing like almost losing a child for you to go, oh, I'm going to step up and be a real good dad now because I don't want to go through that again. And whew, well, so let me just give me a second. As I said, I need to calm down myself.
A lot of the times I've never really gone into that depth with that story because mostly when I tell people it's like, oh, it was an injury, there's 6 month recovery, it happens. Life goes on. But getting into such detail, it just reminds me of how short life can be and how and yeah, and then people forget that you have to make the most with what you have. And I saw a quote the other day on a video I was watching, I think, and it said you have two lives. and you live the second one when you realize you only have one. And that is exactly what happened to me when I got kicked. I was people My dad was actually the one that told me that someone only truly changes when you get your health or your freedom taken away. So being taken both, where freedom of, movement and athleticism, as well as my health, where my mom had to be forcing me to take vitamins because the only thing I would eat, because I hated the soup that my grandma would make, which was vegetable soup. And I would sneak down to the kitchen and mash Oreos with milk and drink that. And that was the only thing that was supplementing my body for the next 6 months. I would say that was the main course. So it was difficult nutrition wise because I was so picky. And then it just made me wake up and realize that, you only have one body. And without that in proper health, you can't really do anything properly.
I want to talk about scars for a moment, both emotional and physical. You mentioned you don't go into this detail because a lot of people don't understand. A lot of people haven't been through their own physical surgeries, procedures. And I've heard you say, oh yeah, 6 months, oh yeah, 5 months. But there's so much in those 6 months and those 5 months and the rehab, both emotional and physical. You're an attractive girl, and as a 16-year-old, a lot of 16-year-old, they wrap their identity with the way they looked. When it happened to you, like, how was life for you? Like, when did you go back to school? You mentioned earlier that week you were doing your mock exams. Like, what happened with your exams and your studies in your school? And fits in at school when you've been scarred? Like, how was that? I want to learn what it was like for a 16-year-old girl to go through that trauma.
I think that was the worst part. I think it was one of the hardest things that I still struggle with sometimes, but
And just so you know, sorry to interrupt again, being rude. I mean, you shouldn't struggle. You shouldn't struggle. I mean, like, this makes you you, and that's what makes you the amazing person that you are. Like, please don't struggle. Like, because scars you wear show that you're a fighter and you're still here, and your story makes you even more charismatic as a person.
when I was 16, I had freshly taken off my braces not too long ago. And if you could ask anyone around me that time, my favorite aspect of myself was my smile. So it was a point where I could smile for any picture. I wouldn't even care because girls usually they would look at the picture, but like, no, take it over. I would just smile, never ask to take a second picture because I didn't care. And like I loved my smile. I was confident. I was good at my sports. Like there was nothing stopping me at that point. And it wasn't a point of being vain, but it was a point of just loving already what I had. And I remember the first time I saw myself in the mirror when I was in the hospital after the surgery, and I was swollen. I didn't look like myself. And I went to the bathroom and I had to use the bathroom. And so I was tired of people helping me. So I was like, Mommy, like I can do it, I can manage. So I took the IV, the pole that has IV on it. So I took it with me to the bathroom. I used the bathroom and I went to go wash my hands and I looked up in the mirror. I broke. I broke into a million pieces right then and there. And then that day, I couldn't accept visitors anymore. I was breaking down with people looking at me. I couldn't recognize myself. Imagine going to the mirror and you don't know who you're looking at. And it's nothing pretty. It's swollen. It's gauze. It's blood. It's scars. My eye was swollen shut for about 2 weeks after that surgery. Because what happened when they had to go in, they actually went through the eye itself. Like they moved the eyeball up and they went through the eye socket and repaired it. And then I have one scar here, which was surgical. So it was so much going on. I was like crying blood for like 2 weeks and I was picking off. So I couldn't see well. And it was just, I opened my eyes and it was just, I couldn't tell who that was in the mirror. And then because all of this was torn in half, half my face was paralyzed. So I couldn't talk with half my mouth. I was talking and only this side of my face was moving. I would smile, only this side of my face would smile. So it would all look like I had no movement. So it was difficult and I thought that's how it was gonna be forever. And I didn't want to go into public anymore. I didn't want to do anything anymore. And it was it was hard to adjust to that. It took me about 3, 4 weeks to go back to school, I think. I vaguely remember. And it was a slow adjustment. But one thing that hit the hardest was my peers that I went to school with. I never really was fond of many of my peers because I was so different. It was hard for me to get along with others. It's for my prom after my exams, because I had to take my exams. There were 3 months after the mock exams, which I didn't really have much time in school or to study. So I took them. I didn't do very well. I was about C's and D's and maybe some B's with some subjects I was stronger in. But it hit me when I was at my prom and they were giving out awards to like different kids and all what they stand out. So I was always the most athletic. So I was waiting for something like best athlete or most athletic or strongest. I don't know what it was, but I was waiting for something along those lines. And then they called my name and they told me the best scar.
The best what?
The best scar. And I took a deep breath and that just put the nail a little bit deeper. And I said, I want to go home. I looked at my prom date. I was like, I want to leave. I accepted it with a smile. I said, thank you. And from that day, I changed. I was accepting. I was, you know what? If the people around me aren't going to see me for what I see me as, that's their problem. And that's all that really matters. Because at the end of the day, I remember someone told me, you can't let people stress you if one, they're not affecting your income, they're not affecting your daily life, and you don't see them every day. So you can't let you allow things to stress you. And you just have to control your environment and what you let into your ears. Because if you put it this way, I saw once that someone was saying, if someone's speaking another language and you can't hear them, you can't understand them, and they're speaking horribly about you, you can't understand them, but it doesn't change what they're saying. It's the same aspect. You just pretend like you can't understand them. They have no relevance to your life, so you just move on. It's hard. I still struggle with it sometimes, but it's something that you just gotta do. At least for your own sanity.
You're doing unbelievably well. And by talking so candidly about something that brings you and has brought you so much pain, you're enabling other people to heal from their own scars, be it physical, emotional, or mental as well. So thank you. You should be really, really, really proud of yourself. Really proud of yourself. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. You went through a horrible, horrible 3 months, but you got through it. Now, most people say, yeah, I mean, maybe it's not for me. I'm now going to go and do something else. You went back to equestrian. You gave it another chance.
I did. I was actually itching to get back in the saddle, and it took me about 6 months to get back on the horse. I got kicked in the end of January. I had 2 operations after that, again, minor. It was difficult to have everything removed and still not be able to eat because all the tissues are frozen. So every day in the morning, I was actually leveraging my mouth open with tongue suppressors. I can't remember what they're called. But the popsicle sticks. I'll put one in, I'd lever it open and close. I'd put a second one, so it'd be 2 levering it open and close. So every day, I'd slowly be making it more and more until I could open my mouth.
Essentially, you used a stick to crowbar your own jaw open after being wide shut for months.
It was a slow process. It was one of the most frustrating because I could eat, but I couldn't. And it was so frustrating that all I wanted to do was have a piece of fried chicken and I couldn't open my mouth.
Good choice.
But I remember the feeling of just wanted something that tasted good because I was so tired of eating the same soup and the same milkshake and the same exact things every single day.
You went again, you gave another go, and you got bucked off the horse again, and I saw that you broke your shoulder.
Yeah, I got another one to the collection. That was also surgical.
That must have been hard for you just to go what you've been through. You've lost weight, your jaw still, and I'm sure your jaw still gets sore. My friend broke his jaw in 2008, and a boxer, and when it's winter in the cold, his jaw gets stiff and sore. So I'm sure he's still experiencing the pain now, especially back then. The nerves that you must have felt of going back to the same horse, like what was it? What were you feeling? What did you have to overcome? What mental barrier did you have to overcome to get back on the horse, literally and metaphorically?
I think back then I was so prideful with because I was this top equestrian in Jamaica and I was so good at it. And I just loved it. And everyone was in my ear saying, okay, what are you gonna do now? You can't go back to riding. Like they were all suggestive that I wouldn't be going back. And that just upset me. And I was like, well, I'm not gonna do what you think I'm gonna do. I'm gonna be stubborn and I'm gonna do whatever that I can't do. And I'm gonna go right back on the horse. And it was me more pretending that there was no issue. So I got back on the horse and I was like, I'm fine. No issue. So I didn't really feel any nerves. And I didn't acknowledge it, but I realized that in order to be brave, you kind of have to pretend you're brave and just go for it. You have to know your limits. And that is where the tricky part comes in with bravery, where you don't go past your gut. So there's a trick that I used to use where if you feel it in your chest, that's genuine fear. If you feel it in your stomach, that's just your instinct. So I just went back on the horse. It's like, I'm fine. Everything's fine. Everyone needs to relax. Everyone's high strung and needs to let me be what I want to be. So I got back on the horse. And so January 2015, I broke my jaw. November 2015, I broke my shoulder on the same horse. So I actually fell off the horse and I broke my rotator cuff. And when I fell off, I went to get up quickly because my horse liked to run away after falling off. Like, oh yeah, I can go back to the paddock and not care. I can do whatever I want now. So that was his personality. So I would get up very quickly and I put all my weight on my right hand and I just felt it snap. And I just sat back down. I sat back down and I was like, it's not broken. It's not broken. I'm fine. And I took some tape. I taped it to myself and I looked at my coat. I was like, do not tell my parents. Nobody tell anybody. So I drove myself to the hospital. And there you have it. My mom and my dad standing with their arms folded in front of the emergency room, waiting on me to get there. I tried. So that was actually the tipping point more for my parents, where they're like, you need another surgery now. Your rotator cuff is broken in half. I had to get a metal plate from hair to hair to hold it together to heal it. So that was another healing process in itself. And it was just one thing after another. I had exams again, and then it was just too much for my parents. So my dad said, Sarah, let's just finish high school and then, you can get back into riding when you come back from college or when you're coming back home to visit, things like that, take it slow. And then, of course, I was sitting down and played football, doing cheerleading, doing volleyball, swimming wasn't enough for me. It was just like, that was just a part of the routine of going to high school. So it was nothing like pushing me. It was nothing testing me, or it was boring. So my dad, who has a long history in motorsports, said, "Here's a go-kart. Try go-karting." And when I sat in the seats and I felt it and I felt the speed, like it just felt good. I don't know how to say it. It just felt like, yes, this is what I want to do. Like I like this. And it was a love-hate relationship. That was when I say that was a battlefield, that was a battlefield because imagine that I'm 18 years old when I just started go-karting. I'm going against other 16 to 18-year-old kids who have been doing it since they were 3 years old. And I was doing horseback riding since I was 3 years old. So imagine I'm going into a brand new sport. I don't know nothing. I have very little history in it. The most I had in racing was dirt bikes, and that was for 2 years when I was 10 to 12. So I entered. I was the first one. I was always losing, and imagine I'm putting in the same amount, if more, hard work, more discipline, more training, more ambition into it because I'm so behind, and I'm still losing. And when I was putting in that amount in writing, I was always winning. So it was like, what am I doing wrong? Like, why is it that I cannot as fast as them? Why is it that I can't do what they do? And then slowly, I'm still struggling with that because I'm now into a professional career and I'm going against people who have been doing it since they were 4 or 5 years old and have been professional in this for years. And I'm just brand new going to tracks I've never been to, in cars I've never been with very little training. And it's just being thrown into the deep end. And I have to remember that, coming sixth or eighth or, around those numbers, that's a hell of an achievement for me. Because you know what? If I compare myself to the other drivers, I shouldn't even be in this field. I shouldn't. But I'm there. I have the opportunity and I'm just going to keep my head down. And even while I'm racing, I'm learning. I don't care if I'm in last place. I'm still in last place with some of the best people in the field. And I'm learning and I'm pushing. I'm not going to give up because one day I will be on that podium. Probably won't be this year or next year, and but it will come. It's something with racing that you need the seat time, and everyone keeps telling me that, sorry, you just need the time in the chair, you just need the time in the chair, you just need more days in the you need more laps in because you need to understand the feeling of the car. And now I'm just starting to get that feeling in the car where you feel the car slip a little. It's not out of control, you're controlling it, and it's hard to explain, but there's that feeling, that connection you have with the car that comes with experience, and that is the only place I'm lacking. And I promised myself that I cannot give up until I see that podium.
Sarah, Sarah, I just want to, like, you've said so many good things. Honestly, I want to, like, I just want to stop and, like, explore certain things because you've said so many amazing things in there. You said a moment ago about you, you are going to get to the podium. You are going to, even when you were coming sixth and eighth and tenth from last, you can, that unwavering self belief. Why? Because it's not just about time in the chair. Because if it was just time in the on the track doing laps, the most experienced person, would win all the time, and that doesn't happen. So, how that unwavering self belief that you have to know you're going to get there one day, what does that come from?
My mom, it comes from my mom. She has been the most supportive person. Like, she has instilled so much belief in me. Moms in general, the strength that a mom has always blown me away. And I've seen it in other moms and I've seen it around the world from culture to culture. And it's since I was little, no matter what I wanted to do, she was always there. She was always pushing me when I didn't believe in myself, or even in horseback riding and in racing. She has no experience to what I'm doing, but she'll sit there and Google things about, oh, have you tried this? Or look, this is a training program. And when you're a teenager, you kind of brush off your mom. But no matter what everything she said to me back then has still stuck.
She sounds like an absolute superhero. So shout out to your mum, and hopefully we'll have her on the podcast as well one day. And there's this quote that I saw when you were talking. I saw that I'll look for this quote, and this is what your mum did for you, and this is why it's so important to. I'll just listen to this quote. Never underestimate where the belief other people have in you can take you. Right? That's so powerful because sometimes we don't believe things and we need other people to say, listen, don't forget who you are. Don't forget what you can do. So, well, huge shout out to your mum, and also a huge shout out to stubbornness. I'm stubborn as anything. As like people will say, sometimes you gotta be stubborn, especially when you're like, as driven as you are. And lastly, on this section, what's the dream now in racing? What is the dream?
Honestly, I have to be a little realistic with racing. I am 25 years old, and in this profession, yes, you have men who are racing in the sport till 50 years old doing GT racing. You can carry it until you're a lot older. However, it also comes with needing a lot of funding because racing is very expensive. And, you know, if I were to have a proper backing, I would want to take racing as far as I can. My goal, my dream would be to get to Le Mans 24 hours. And it's right now my most important aspect of racing that I'm concentrating on is opening the door for other women. So it's kind of showing that yes, I entered the sport late. Yes, I have a driven talent for wanting to like the work ethic, but I'm trying to show people that no matter what you want to do in life, nothing's impossible. It's never too late. Everyone has this tiring saying that, oh, it's too late for me. It's too late for me. I'm like, but if you kept saying that from when you're 20 to 30, if you did it when you were 20, it wasn't too late. Even now at 30, it's not too late. It's never too late to want to go after your dreams, even if you have to slightly change it. If you want to get into F1, there are different pathways. There's engineering pathways, there's commentating, there's social media asset, and there's so many ways that you can get involved in racing. And it's just showing women that just because it's a male dominated field doesn't mean that you don't belong there.
What's the fastest you've ever been in a car?
I think the fastest I've been in a race car was about 260 kilometers an hour.
I knew you were going to say that. So I knew you were going to say that. And I did some Googling last night. So that's about 170 miles an hour for those in the UK who know miles an hour, which is the same speed, which I Googled yesterday. That's the same speed of an aeroplane just before it takes off. Guys, before it takes off. It's unbelievably terrifying. And I watched some videos of you yesterday when you were in the ice. I think you were was in Sweden?
I was either in Sweden or in Italy in the Alps.
Italy, yes, right, yeah. And I sort of when you got on the track and the camera's obviously inside the car. And I was terrified for you just watching YouTube. Unbelievable. Like what? Like
It's all relative, to be honest, because if you get used to something, it no longer feels scary. So it's all about, again, experience. And if you do put it into a different perspective, where if you have 60 people on the track and you're all going the same speed, more or less, give or take maybe 10 or 15 miles per hour. So if you'll have no more than about 4 to 6 people directly beside or around you at the time. So if you're all going the same speed, it all kind of feels like you're staying still. You're all going the exact same speed. You're all entering the corner. You're all moving at the same pace. So you don't feel a difference. So I could be going 170 miles per hour or 270 miles per hour. That difference from fast to really, really, really fast, you won't feel a difference.
So I really enjoyed like some of the things you've said today. It's been really powerful. It's actually helped me on my own journey, helped to let go of some of the things that I'm still stuck on. And I mean, you're a winner to the core. You're a winner to the core. And there's this quote, the eyes are a window into your soul. That's why boxers, we stare each other in the eyes before we fight, because you want to see a little bit of weakness. And there's an amazing picture on your Instagram that I love. You're there with the helmet on, your eyes, and you're just so in the zone. Do you see the fierce competitor that I see, that I think the world see, that your family and friends see? What is it that you see?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like I should say I see someone that's so strong and fierce competitive, but really and truly, when I look in the mirror, I just see I'm just doing what I have to do. Like almost like I just see someone faking it till they make it. And in that I mean like training and pushing myself and doing well in school. And I've always believed that habits create character. So I try to build good habits in terms of my diet, my schoolwork, my gym routines, my everything I put in my body, down to the grams, down to the nutrients of everything. making my bed every single morning, making sure my space is always clean because I've always found that a messy space is a messy mind. As preliminary as that sounds, I find it to be true because when I'm in a mess or a cluttered space, like I can't relax. So I have to make sure everything's clean. So I just see someone that's going through life one step at a time. And I'm trying so hard to just hold it together for each step that it's so hard to focus on 20 steps ahead. I'm just kind of focused on the next step with kind of an idea of where I want to go. So when I look in the mirror, it's just a basic, strong person who is doing what I have to do in order to get what I need to do done.
You said you have to do rather than you want to do or to just do. Why do you have to do it? What's the have? What does that mean?
I mean, if I want to be the best, I have to work like I am the best. So if to me, I don't accept nothing but the best from myself. Whether that's coming sixth place, that's my win. That's my win. So I don't look at it as a list or a resume of what I need to fill for someone else's standard, but it's what I have to do in order to sleep well at night in my own mind. Like, I don't like failing. And to me, failure is not trying. It's not, it's giving up. So you do, I mean, don't get me wrong. I've had the days where I've thrown everything against the wall saying, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm tired of it. What if I just quit? What if I just wish I never started before? Countless amounts of days where I really just want to just quit. So it's come down to the village I've brought around me, my friends, my family, who I have around me. Because if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have made it this far. I wouldn't have had this belief in myself. I wouldn't be this confident because everything you see before you with me, I have my support village right behind me, holding me up because I couldn't do it without them.
I've heard you say this numerous times, and I've heard you refer to your network, your people, as your village. And I'll be honest again, when I first heard you say that in a 5-minute interview, I got tingles. I'd heard that term before, but oftentimes in sport, we become selfish. We can be a little bit selfish, especially in individual sports like boxing, like racing. Like sometimes people think it is all about them, and not enough do we say, no, we're only here because of our village. And the famous phrase, it takes a village to raise a child. And what a powerful, strong woman your village has raised.
It doesn't matter the quantity or how big your village is. It matters the quality of the village. It matters how strong each person in the village is and what each person has to offer. Not meaning that you should keep people around for what they can give you. I don't believe in that. But it's a matter of making sure that the people you keep around you add value to your life, have something to teach you, push you to be better, don't hinder you. That is the most important part. Make sure that your village are people that push you to be better and call you out on your foolishness. Like I have all of my friends that when I do foolishness or when I'm speaking like I want to give up, they put me in my place and they're like, Sarah, like stop, like you're sounding like a clown.
I like to end on quotes. I often tell my guests to bring a quote in. And I heard a quote, I saw a quote recently that I love. I'm going to tell it to you. If you always do what you can, you'll never be more than you are. Now, who said that?
I read that when I broke my jaw. I read that somewhere, and I was trying so hard to find who said that, but it has
No,
stuck
you said
with
it. And
me.
then just take the credit. You said it. Those words had never been put together before you said it. This is your quote. Can you please say it in your voice and tell me what that means to you?
I live by that. If you always do what you can, you'll never be more than you are, which means that if you always remain in your daily routine, in your comfort zone, not stepping out of what you know, you'll never learn anything. You'll never become better. So you'll always be the same person you were yesterday. And to me, that's stagnant. You can't remain stagnant in life. There's so many things to learn in the world, whether it's preliminary or basics. Don't Like, I learn something new every day, whether it's something to do with the weather or something to do with my mom said years ago or something completely fundamental in school. And to me, that's a win for a day. I mean, I learned something. I bettered myself. It's small, but it's there. And when you want to walk 10 miles, every step counts. So whether it's baby steps you want to take, you're still going to get there, whether it doesn't matter how long you take. So you have to push yourself to be a little bit uncomfortable to be able to change or learn or become better than you were yesterday. And to me, that's a win in life. It doesn't matter if you're in the same job for your whole life. If you're learning stuff and you're going better at your job, that's a win.
Is there anything else you want to say?
Um, I think the last thing I want to leave everyone with is you don't know how strong you are until being strong is your only option.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that podcast. I loved it. As I said at the beginning, I've listened to that 2 or 3 times now, and each time I listen to it, I hear something new. And each time I'm blown away by the wisdom in the head and on the shoulder of such a young woman. Whatever she does in her life, she's gonna be amazing at it. She's one of these people that just exudes positivity, charisma, charm, and she's an amazing person. Sarah, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I loved it. Next week we're coming back with another brand new podcast, another inspiring story, another blueprint to success. Until then, take care. If you get down this week, always get back up, and I'll see you next week.